Now, what can we learn from those insights for practical radicalization prevention work in schools? Please observe the following 3 conclusions. The first point I'd like to highlight is that radicalization processes are legitimate and very often an expression of an ongoing psychosocial crisis or a mechanism to cope with vulnerabilities in adolescence development. In fact, as I already said, only a very small fraction of radicalized individuals at the end of their radicalization process resort to violence and perpetrate violent acts. So, prevention work is not about preventing radicalization itself, but about preventing radicalization turning violent. The second point I'd like to make is that radicalization processes of adolescence are always preceded by or related to psychosocial or developmental crisis. This is precisely the reason why prevention interventions have to take into account developmental as well as contextual factors such as specific vulnerabilities in the individual's personal and social life. And the last conclusion I'd like to highlight is that the vast majority of adolescents tangled up in processes of radicalization usually show signs and behaviors that indicate a radicalization process or psychosocial crisis is underway. As scientific research has been able to prove many Islamist perpetrators had shown conspicuous signs and behaviors long before they committed violent attacks. In other words, signs and behaviors pointing to alarming radicalization or psychosocial crisis can often be observed at an early point in time. So mindful observation of indicators offers great opportunities for successful and tailor-made prevention and early intervention to counter further escalation of those radicalization processes. Moreover, close cooperation between school personnel, psychologists, parents, and other specialists is needed to increase awareness for the realities of radicalization processes and to develop effective help for the people affected. Before going into the details about how prevention work can look like in a school environment, I think it is important to understand what prevention exactly means. So we are now going to have a quick look at prevention theory first. In the first step, it is important to understand how prevention is defined. So we'll have to look at what are the objects of prevention interventions, what are the objectives of prevention interventions, and who are the target groups of prevention interventions. In our understanding, prevention refers to any kind of action or intervention that aims to promote, change, or stop from coming into existence, happening, or intensifying certain types of already existent or still non-existent behaviors, relationships, circumstances, structures, and/or conditions in individuals, groups, social environmental settings, and/or social demographic structures. There are 6 different types of prevention interventions that are distinguished according to the point of time at which the preventative intervention takes place and the group or circle of people the preventative intervention targets. With regard to the point of time of preventative interventions, We usually talk about primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. And with regard to the target groups of preventative interventions, we usually talk about universal prevention, selective prevention, and indicated prevention. Primary prevention interventions refer to all kinds of interventions that take place before the harmful conditions set off, which the intervention seeks to prevent. Secondary prevention interventions refer to all kinds of interventions that take place while the harmful conditions which the interventions seek to prevent are still ongoing. And tertiary prevention interventions refer to all kinds of interventions that take place after the harmful conditions which the interventions seek to prevent have already come to an end. The objective here is to prevent those harmful conditions from flaring up again. Universal prevention interventions refer to interventions that target all persons belonging to a clearly defined group of individuals, regardless of their different levels of risk to fall into the harmful condition which the intervention seeks to prevent. Selective prevention interventions, by contrast, target all persons belonging to a specific subgroup of individuals, which on the basis of circumstantial criteria have been identified with certain risk factors to fall into the harmful condition which the intervention seeks to prevent. And interventions labeled as indicated prevention interventions target all individuals who have already fallen into the harmful condition which the intervention seeks to prevent, or who have proven risk factors to fall into that. Now, when we think about how schools can advance prevention work in their daily routines, we will quickly see there's myriads and a great variety of interventions school can set up to help counter potential radicalization processes inspired by Islamist ideas among their students. On this slide, we have just collected a very small selection of prevention interventions schools can carry out to tackle potential radicalization processes. Now, please watch the following video produced by the Radicalization Awareness Network to get some clues about how you could run a classroom discussion with young people on radicalization or violent extremism related issues. Think about the following questions. Do's and don'ts. What is helpful to run such discussions, and what should you avoid? What do you need to learn to improve your facilitation skills? What resources can you draw upon? Now, if we look again at our collection of prevention interventions school can carry out in their daily routines, we'll quickly see two things. The first observation is that usually all interventions fit into the fields of primary or universal and secondary or selective prevention. Schools rarely engage in tertiary or indicated prevention, as cases at that stage have already escalated too far and need the intervention of specialists. And the second observation is that virtually all actions which we have listed on our slide resemble rather isolated interventions. They are set up at one or a few specific points in time, with or without the help of external partners, but usually do not operate embedded in a broader structural logic inside school's microcosm. And this is precisely a gap which the Radicalisation Prevention Program developed by Berlin Free University called NetWave, or Networks Against Violent Extremism, tries to bridge. So in the next section of this module, we'll move on to learn more about what NetWave actually is and how it works as a prevention program.